Welcome back to When Bad Things Happen to Good People, a podcast about censorship and the arts. My name is Todd Sullivan. Joining me, as always, is Peter Amin.
Hello, hello.
And today we are talking about Salò, or the 120 Days of Sodom. People might have heard of the second half of this film titled the 120 Days of Sodom, because it's a fairly famous book, The 120 Days of Sodom by the Marquis de Sade, and I believe he wrote when he was in prison.
Yeah. Well, he wrote a few when he was in prison, I think, right?
Probably. Once you get in prison, there's not a lot to do, so I think a lot of people tend to write in prison. But yeah, this was, I think, his most famous. And this film is kind of loosely an adaptation of that, and was originally going to be two films.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Pier Paolo Pasolini, the director and co-writer. This was going to be part of his trilogy of, what was it called? I can't quite remember, but it was going to follow up a previous trilogy he had done. Oh, Trilogy of Death. That's what it was called. And it was originally going to be, Salò was going to be one film, and the 120 Days of Sodom was going to be another film.
Oh, okay.
And as they were working on it, they realized that the sort of Salò being this film about, fascism under Mussolini in Italy, there were kind of common threads. Yeah. And they decided to kind of put them together. And that's how we ended up with this
combo movie.
Which is adapting some of the concepts of the 120 Days of Sodom, which is basically a book about a bunch of people who are forced to
carry out sexual perversions.
Yeah, I was going to say experience, because I was thinking about the people that it's being done to. Because you have the people who are sort of committing the acts, and then the people who are receiving or having the acts committed to them. And this film is sort of doing it through the lens of the ruling class,
kind of having their fun
with the people that they can toy with and play with, etc. So it's a 1975 film. It is described by Wikipedia as a political art horror film, which I think is a fairly accurate description.
It gets fairly horrific.
It does get fairly
and
horrific.
Stays political throughout, I would say. There's always like one of these guys, usually the Duke, kind of espousing some kind of ideology throughout the film.
Yeah, there's a lot of ideological sort of stuff being talked about. And in fact, some of these, again, this is from Wikipedia, but like some of the conversations and some of the quotes come from Nietzsche, Ezra Pound, and Marcel Proust. As far as the controversy around the film and the censorship of the film, it has been banned in several countries because of its graphic portrayals of rape, torture, and murder, mainly of people thought to be younger than 18 years of age. The film remains banned in several countries and sparked numerous debates among critics and censors about whether or not it constituted pornography due to its nudity and graphic depictions of sexual acts. The film was rejected by the British Board of Film Censors in January 1976. It was first screened at the Old Compton Street Cinema Club in Soho, London in 1977, in an uncut form and without certification from BBFC Secretary James Furman. The premises were raided by the Metropolitan Police after a few days. A cut version, prepared under Furman's supervision, again without formal certification, was subsequently screened under Cinema Club conditions. For some years, in 2000, in an uncut form, the film was finally passed for theatrical and video distribution in the United Kingdom. The film was not banned in the United States and received a limited release in October 1977. It was, however, banned in Ontario, Canada.
Ooh.
In 1994, an undercover policeman in Cincinnati, Ohio, rented the film from a local gay bookstore and then arrested the owners for pandering. A large group of artists, including Martin Scorsese and Alec Baldwin, and scholars signed a legal brief arguing the film's artistic merit. The Ohio State Court dismissed the case because the police violated the owner's Fourth Amendment rights without reaching the question of whether the film was obscene. It was banned in Australia in 1976 for reasons of indecency. After a 17-year-long ban, the Australian Classification Board passed the film with an R18, uncut for theatrical release in July 1993. However, the Australian Classification Review Board overturned this decision in February 1998 and banned the film outright for offensive cruelty with high-impact sexual violence and depictions of offensive and revolting fetishes. The film was then pulled from all Australian cinemas. Salò was resubmitted for classification in Australia in 2008, only to be rejected once again. The DVD print was apparently a modified version, causing outrage in the media over censorship and freedom of speech. In 2010, the film was submitted again.
So sorry, that it was recut?
Yeah, so there was a recut, there was a modified version, let's say. And it doesn't say whether or not that was something that Australia had recut themselves. Yeah. The way it's phrased does sound like it may not have been an official, like whether or not Pasolini had chosen an edited version. I don't think he would have, because he was killed before the film was released. Eventually, though, it seems like Australia really didn't want this movie to get out. But what I thought was interesting about the Australia thing with the 2010, when it was submitted again and passed with an R18 rating, according to the Australian Classification Board media release, the DVD was passed due to the inclusion of 176 minutes of additional material, which provided a context to the feature film.
Like interviews and the like?
I suspect what we're thinking? It's probably some amount of like documentary footage on the making of it, discussing the intent of the footage, how the intent was to sort of show, fascism and the corruption of power and all that sort of stuff. And because that context was provided, that is what allowed them to finally approve the film. That the film, I guess they felt like the film on its own
lacked the artistic merit to
without people weren't able to, or they didn't feel people would be able to draw that out themselves without having it spelled out.
Interesting.
So that is interesting. And I don't know how I feel about that, but
that is interesting. We don't really know how the Australian kind of film boards work necessarily, but my understanding is usually the work stands on its own. But
And in New Zealand, the film was originally banned in 1976, which was upheld in 1993. In 1997, special permission was granted for the film to be screened uncut at a film festival. And in 2001, the DVD was finally passed uncut with an R rating. It is fairly easy to get your hands on now. The Criterion Collection does have a DVD and a Blu-ray available of it. No 4K. Some of the filmmakers who have cited this film as one of their favorites or as inspiration. We have David Cross, Gaspar Noé, Rainer Werner Fassbinder, and John Waters, to name just a few.
As a favorite? Okay.
Yeah, John Waters said, Salò is a beautiful film. It uses obscenity in an intelligent way, and it's about the pornography of power.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That is fair.
Yeah. Let's talk about the movie.
Yeah, let's get into it. I guess one thing that I noticed, or that kind of struck me from kind of the opening scenes, is there's no steady cam. Like the camera is bouncing around.
Oh.
Like it's later on in the movie, like when they're inside.
I mean, I think technically this movie predated the existence of
but the opening scenes that are like exterior, we see guys, riding on bicycles and that kind of thing. Like, I noticed it. Like it kind of took me out of it a little bit.
Yeah.
Just like how shaky the camera work was. Obviously the technology at the time, would have made that difficult.
Exactly.
But later in the movie, I saw, like, especially, there's a lot of mirror work in certain parts of the movie when people are getting ready or whatnot. And like, that was really, I thought, well done. You don't see any cameras. The angles are all so from a cinematographer, from that perspective, there's some, like, the opening of the movie, I was like, oh, I don't know. And then later in the movie, I'm going, well, this is like really good work, especially for the time. So, there was kind of like that disparity there where I was like, oh, like it hit me at first. And then later on in the movie, I found myself going, oh, wow, like this is really cool how they're, how it's all come together. I don't know if that's a budget or, that kind of issue, on the main set versus location shooting or that kind of stuff. But it almost kind of biased me a little bit out of the gate, going, oh, like is it going to be shaky, or is it going to, be a little more, amateur hour kind of thing from the cinematographer? But, obviously later in the movie, it's much different, but it was a little bit of a hurdle at first for me.
I do think for the most part, it is a pretty good looking film as far as the way, it's lit and the way it's shot, the way it's framed, which is interesting given the subject matter and how, grotesque and obscene a lot of it is.
And there's some really cool shots that we'll talk about, especially later in the movie. From a camera perspective, maybe not from a content perspective, but so let's see. It starts out with our four best friends.
Yes. Yeah. You wanna give us the quick 2-sentence description that we landed on before we started recording?
Right. So this is our synopsis of the movie. If you're totally to take it out of context, is four best friends just living their best life out in the countryside. Yeah, and I guess that's one way to look at the movie, but it is a little bit different. So we open in this kind of like, I don't know if it's a secret meeting room or something like that, but we've got these four guys, and one is, your honor, and one's your excellency. And so it's basically the president and, the high judge and the duke and the bishop of northern Italy, right? Salò, where it's set, and they're kind of signing this little book. We don't know what is in this book aside from we see the cover of the book, which says reglamati, which means rules, essentially in Italian. So they've we kind of know these guys are powerful guys. They've signed their names in this rule book, and we don't really know what else is going on. And then we flash to our exterior kind of scenes in northern Italy, and we basically have soldiers rounding up young dudes. Yeah.
They end up in total rounding up nine girls and 9 boys. There's also, I think...
Well, they round up quite a few, but they go through a selection process. That is
true. They end up with 9 of each. But they do round up quite a few initially. And also, I think they round up sort of 4 guards, right? Because when we first see the guards being rounded up, and I think those are the men we see rounded up first, I kind of thought those were some of the boys that would be experiencing whatever's being done. But no, they're off to be guards.
Like the special guards,
And it almost, in a way, felt like, you remember I can't remember what school it was done at now, but like the famous prison experiment where some students got to be prison guards and some of them got to be prisoners, and the guards eventually sort of ruled over the prisoners without compassion. It almost felt a little bit like that, like who they were grabbing could have gone either way. I didn't get the sense from the boys that were gathered up to be guards that they necessarily knew they were going to be guards until they got there.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, it kind of was the same process in terms of gathering up these special guards versus kind of gathering up the other, victims, let's say, of this crazy time. So, I get that, where you're kind of like, you're getting snatched off the street. What role are you going to be put into? Yeah.
And all at the whims and the mercy of the
four best
rulers,
friends.
the four best
friends. And they do actually call themselves the four friends.
Do they?
Later on in the movie. So that's kind of where I took that as the four best friends. But so they're gathering up all these.
And when I see their titles, it does make me think of the start of a joke, like a duke, a bishop, a magistrate, and a president walk into a bar.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they rape everyone there.
Basically, yeah. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
So they gather up all these kids, boys and girls, and they kind of go through this process of, evaluating them essentially, right? So they make some of them undress and, let us see them, see how they look. And, they want to be described. They want, well, how did you catch this guy? And the one girl, well, she saw her mother drown in front of us, and that makes them all happy.
They got pretty excited
she's got this trauma, and so it's this whole process, and then eventually they select. When they're going through the boys, they have these little notebooks, and they write a name and put it in a little glass box, like, oh yeah, he's selected.
Exactly. Yeah,
we didn't quite see that with the girls, but we understand there's apparently a pretty lengthy evaluation process so they can select their innocents, their virgins to bring onto their little country getaway.
Their little country getaway.
Yeah.
And so the film is split up into sort of 4 chapters.
Mm-hmm.
And this initial chapter is, and they are somewhat based on different levels of
Dante's Inferno.
Dante's Inferno. Yeah.
So yeah, Antechamber is this gathering selection process.
Anti-Inferno.
Or yeah, Antechamber of Hell was in my English translation.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's this whole preparing process.
Yeah. And then once they've sort of selected everybody, they all get loaded up into these military trucks.
Yeah. And they're going to drive out to the countryside. During this transportation, one of the guys
takes a moment
is like,
to try to escape. I'm out of here. Yeah, fuck this shit.
So he jumps out of the truck, he takes off running, and the guards just kind of shoot him down.
Yeah, I thought he was going to make it. He went pretty far.
He got really far.
Even
they were shooting at him for a while.
Yeah, my headcanon is he still might have been alive because
he just faked it.
Exactly. Yeah. He got far enough that he could have, because they didn't go and check. They just all right, he dropped. Let's get on with we got some torturing to do. So he might have outsmarted them.
Maybe he did it.
There could be Salò 2, the second 120 days of Sodom.
So anyway, and then the 4 best friends are a little upset because it was like, oh, now there's only 8 boys and 9 girls, and
how do you do that? It's an uneven number. That's no good.
So they get to the countryside, and they're at this, quite lavish estate.
And now we're at the Circle of Manias.
Yes. And so this is where now we find out what was in the little rule book that the 4 best friends had. So they gather up all the kids kind of on this field below a balcony, and they basically tell them that, they're basically dead to the world. No one knows they're here.
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares. And we're, super powerful. You'll do whatever we want. And here are the rules, right? We're going to meet every day at these times in the Hall of Orgies.
Yeah.
We're going to
hear stories.
We're going to hear, very, lewd stories that are, set to awaken our passions. And at any time, we can stop the stories and take off and do lewd acts. However, with the exception of if anyone has regular traditional intercourse, that is punishable by losing a limb.
Yeah.
And if anyone does something religious, praying or what have you, that's punishable by death. So they're really setting out here to just be as crazy, wild, lewd, and lascivious as possible.
Yeah. And no God.
Yeah.
So, I guess the first day that we sort of see of this going on, the stories are told by there's these 4 older prostitutes.
Like retired prostitutes, essentially. These madams that are now hired to put on this clinic. I guess. It's just a very weird thing because they're all super happy, and
there's a piano player going in the background, and as the stories are told,
not only she kind of does all the instruments. She's got an accordion at one point.
That's true. I forgot about the accordion.
So we've got a talented kind of musician on staff to accompany these stories. And so the first madam, Signora Vicari, is going to start telling some stories. So essentially, because they're prostitutes, we kind of think these are potentially real stories of things that actually happened to them. So, she starts talking about when she was young at school, and, her sister told her about this professor. He wants, to show her something, and then he has a massive penis, and I
think she was 9 or something.
9, yeah. And he loves to ejaculate on girls' faces, and, she's going to give him that pleasure. And then I don't know if it's the president, I can't remember who stands up and is like, wait a minute, what are you doing? You're not giving enough details.
Right, yeah.
He stops her, and he's like, listen, we told you that when you tell these stories, you have to, he's like, you didn't mention the specifics of the, size of his penis or his
how much he ejaculated.
Like he really starts giving her the gears on her storytelling. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'll do better. Like I'll tell the story with more detail. So yeah, it was just a really weird kind of like, setting the tone, I guess, on the first day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the prostitutes don't always know, how much story to tell at first either, right?
Yeah, and storytelling is maybe not an innate skill of a prostitute, but
I don't know. They seem pretty good at it.
Yeah, I mean, they do weave a tale.
They
some of these
weave
prostitutes,
a tale. Yeah.
And then I think we have our first little
meal or
pull aside. So I think it's the bishop pulls a boy aside during this story, and then he comes back into the room and says, this boy doesn't know what he's doing, right? And he had the gall to pull away from me, and so his name is going to go on the list of people that need to be punished. And so we kind of get that's kind of the first taste of kind of what's going to be happening here in this retreat.
Yes. Then I've got breakfast.
Oh, and a girl tries to escape as well, and she gets caught.
She does get caught, yeah. During breakfast, the girls they're naked, and they're the ones bringing the food in for everybody. And one of the guards, I believe, trips one of the girls. She falls down, and he starts to rape her. While he's raping her, one of the friends gets
the president,
is the president, and starts mooning everybody.
Yeah.
Just having a fun time there.
I mean,
mooning, like, hey,
and also like,
hey, look at this. Hey,
also,
look at this.
Yeah, like fishing for compliments.
Yeah.
Like, because he's like, hey, check this out. And then one of the guys is like, oh, beautiful, sir. And then he goes over by the girl, and he's like, okay, now do me.
Yeah. I think it felt like he needed to like get the guy doing the raping like really pumped out about his own ass. Like, hey, come on. You want this one too, right? Like everybody else really likes it.
That's right.
Yeah. So then
he sold it.
So
then the guard, shifts over. Like he basically goes and, kneels down beside the girl on the floor, and, the guard just moves over, and the president's having a grand old time. Yeah.
Pretty common breakfast ritual.
Big smile on his face, like things are going according to plan.
A bit later, there's a girl and a boy who are forced to get married.
Well, so just before that, okay. So at this same breakfast, the first prostitute that was telling stories goes and gets a mannequin.
Oh, to teach everybody.
Yeah, because she goes, you girls don't know what you're doing with a penis. You don't know how to properly play with a penis. So they bring in this mannequin, and she grabs one of the girls, and she's like, okay, show, here's what you do, use this hand.
Now use your other hand underneath.
And then, one of the guards is like, you're doing it wrong. And kicks her over, and he goes, it's like this. And so,
really, I mean, he knows he's got a penis of his own. So like, he knows how to.
But then she is kind of, I think her name gets on the list of people to be punished as well.
Who's the girl who did it wrong?
Yeah. Yeah. So like there's this list of people that are going to get punished, and we haven't really seen the punishment per se, but they're keeping names on a list.
Yeah.
And then what happens is there's a proposition. I can't remember if it's by like the Duke or the Bishop, but about, is there something wrong with the, kind of sexual yearnings of these kids that they have here. And so they go, let's take the two that we have the most doubts about and see, if we can masturbate them, I think he says.
Yeah,
basically.
So they do take those two and it's kind of to like make sure that they're capable sexually.
I think so, yeah.
Because the argument, I think, is that they're virgins.
Yeah, and can they get there?
Yeah. And so they each have someone sort of working their genitals until orgasm is achieved.
Yeah, the one guard is like, look, he came in my hand. He can do it. He's a man now.
And then same with the one who was working on the woman. And then those two are kind of forced to marry each other.
Yeah. But not the first weird marriage ceremony that we'll see. Or I guess it is the first.
It is the first, but not the last.
Yeah.
But then when it comes time for them to sort of consummate the marriage, the friends kind of jump in and are like, no, you can't do the regular deflowering. That's for us.
Yeah.
And then they sort of tear them apart and they do their own raping of the couple.
Of both of them.
Yeah.
Well, and then while one guy is raping another one of the four friends, goes and sodomizes his for one of the friends. Yeah, so it's just crazy. Sorry, I was just looking at my notes here, and it looks like the girl who did it wrong on the mannequin, like the who's doing the hand job wrong, she's killed. Like she's put in this closet. They open the closet, and she falls out with her dead.
Throat slit.
And then they're like, "Oh yeah, now it's 8. Now it's 8 and 8. Like everything's great now, right? Now we've evened it all out.
We've solved the problem and gotten rid of someone who doesn't know how to. Yeah.
So there was a punishment, I guess, that happened right away.
Right. There's another story, I think, involving dogs or.
Oh yes, yeah. So. I think that one's later.
Okay, well,
or no, maybe not. Yeah, there's the prostitutes tell lots of different stories, and some of them like lead to something happening.
Well, I think most of them do. Most of them in some way inspire some of the following behavior, and there is something that inspires.
Yeah, I think the dog thing is first.
The friends to the dogs is still within the circle of manias. And so, they end up like sort of putting leashes on everybody.
Yeah, because one of her clients made her, kneel on all fours and like fetch walnuts or chestnuts or something around the room. And like he was so excited by her, her being like an animal. And then, they put this into practice. So all the youths are kind of, buck naked. Most have leashes, but they got to come into the breakfast room on all fours. Yep. And the food is, thrown on the floor like scraps or in a bowl.
Or they're forced to sit up and bag or jump for it.
And then, it's like soft kind of bread or something like that. One of the guys puts nails in it and is like, here, eat this up. And then the girl's like, and her mouth is bleeding. And so they're having a grand old time. The four best friends living their best
Another
life.
One of the quote unquote dogs sort of gets up and tries to escape as well and is promptly whipped.
Yes.
And forced to sort of, what's what I'm looking for, smarten up.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's whipped, and then like when he runs around, you see there's like some whip marks on his back, kind of thing. Yeah, whipped like a dog.
Whipped like a dog. And then, according to the Wikipedia breakdown, we're at the circle of shit.
Yeah,
the second circle.
Yeah. So now this is a new prostitute, right? So I guess the first prostitute has told her stories. She's out. So next prostitute is up. Senorita Magia, and so her stories are about defecation.
Indeed.
And, eating that. And so her first story is about how she had a client that, liked doing this. And before she went over there, her madam gave her all this food laced with laxatives. So when she went over there, the client was dressed in a diaper, and then when she shit everywhere, he made her feed him, and he lapped it all up, dipped her fingers in it and feed him, and he lapped it all up. And so the four best friends are just like, oh wow, this is a great idea. This is amazing. Like, oh man, we need to change the rules so that we can make sure that we get these kids to like get all their shit together, and then we can eat it. So now we get into kind of a not so much, I guess, more traditional perversion, but we get into some kind of weird stuff here.
Yeah, well, part of the story, too, that we get from the Signora is about how she killed her mother.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Over a dispute about her prostitution. And it leads the girl whose mother died while they were capturing her to kind of break down at the memory of it. And the way that's responded to is that one of these friends, I believe it's the Duke, decides to go into the middle of the room, drop his trousers, and
shit on the floor.
Shit on the floor.
Yeah.
And offer her a spoon.
Yeah, I mean, he does give her a spoon, but then he's just yelling at her, eat it, bitch. And just, which she does. She takes that spoon and eats it. And then, this is where the four best friends are now like, oh, we got to change the rules so that, we're gonna feed the kids weird stuff, and then we're not gonna let them poop, so that it all gets saved up. And then we see like the next day, I think I can't remember, maybe the bishop, but it comes in to check the chamber pots.
Oh, to see if because they're all supposed to be empty.
They're all supposed to be holding it in for later.
Exactly.
Right?
That's why the chamber pots are supposed to be empty.
Yeah. And so they're, empty. Oh, one girl has it, and she's like, I couldn't help it with everything they're feeding me, and so now she's getting her name in the book of punishments. And then in the boys' dorm, it's, one of the chamber pots has stuff in. He's like, oh, sorry, help yourself, my lord. Yeah. And he's like, the rules. But the payoff, I guess, if you can say that, is they have this feast later in the evening with just
they bring in this fucking
these massive platters full of shit
of God. Just wow.
Which
I can't
which we can only hope that while they were filming this, it was like chocolate or something. Because they're eating it.
Yeah.
Like all, everyone's eating it. It's in their teeth and like.
I don't get squirmy on movies very often. There was a couple moments here I had to sort of look away.
Yeah.
And it was the like little bits on the teeth and stuff like
and
that.
Like the girl's like, I can't go on, and there's shit in her teeth, and it's like, like, I don't know if I can swallow this. And she's like, just pretend it's an offering to the Madonna.
Right.
It's like, man. And just the platters. They make it look pretty realistic. And there's also like another kind of wedding ceremony thing happening here. So I think it's the same guy that got married as a groom to the girl.
And now he's getting
wed to... Yeah, and he's dressed up like a bride now, and he's getting wed to the president.
Yeah.
And
the president is really enjoying this shit.
Yeah,
my God, he's going to town on it.
And he's just, it's on his face, and he's having a great time. And he's like, eat up, boy, you'll need your strength for tonight. And then they're like going upstairs, and he like kisses his forehead, and there's just a lip mark of shit on the kid's forehead. And so from like a disgusting level, we are in the circle of shit now within the movie.
Yeah. And then
the best ass competition.
Yes, that's what I was about to get to. I don't know quite how we get to that, but there's a room basically where everybody is sort of laying down with their asses out in the air.
Yeah.
And they're going through and examining everybody's asses to sort of declare who has the best ass.
Yeah.
And whoever has the best ass, they've decided the prize is going to be death.
Yeah.
Which I don't I would rather not have a great ass.
Yeah, I know.
If that's how it's going to go.
Kind of want to lose that competition.
Yeah. And so there's, a few minutes of like everybody just getting right up.
Well, they turn the lights out.
They do turn the lights out.
To try and like preserve the anonymity, because they don't want
to even be able to tell if it's a boy ass or a girl ass.
They don't want to be biased, right?
Exactly. You wouldn't want to.
These gentlemen are taking this very seriously. So they've got a guy with a flashlight to kind of like shine it on each ass in turn as they go by, and kind of, and make their decisions. And then, they kind of get to the end, and fair is fair. They have a good discussion amongst themselves. And, the one guy is like, well, I really like this one, but I'll go with the majority if you guys like that one better. And so they come
just
to
like
agreement.
A jury of your peers.
That's right. Just very classy, these four gentlemen. So they pick the best ass, which is, I can't remember the name. Franco. So they pull him up, and they pull a gun to his head, and and then the gun clicks. And then the bishop is like,
we're going to save you for even worse stuff
well,
later.
basically,
you think you're going to die that quick?
Yeah, he's like, we plan on killing you 1,000 times over. Exactly. Like, you're not getting out of it that easy, which is pretty horrific at this point because, some of these kids are basically praying for death at this point. So, yeah. Fun times. Mm-hmm. On to the Circle of Blood.
On to the Circle of Blood, where we get kind of another wedding ceremony.
Yeah.
In this one, we have the friends are now dressed up as
so three of the friends.
Yeah.
Well, they're not even dressed as brides. They're just dressed
as women. Okay. Yeah.
But like they're dressed like kind of old women.
Yeah.
Like they're wearing kind of grandma-y type outfits, with like a veil and old timey hats and stuff. And it's like, but they're going for this wedding ceremony. They each have a young lad with them.
Yeah.
And the bishop is presiding over this in his
that was a wild outfit.
Crazy red regalia with mirrors and huge shoulders.
Yeah.
And, just this insane outfit.
The shoulders of kind of like they were ram's heads or something with the curled horns.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they have this little kind of wedding ceremony for each of the other three leaders. And then while that's going on, one of the altar boys or assistants is rubbing the bishop's ass.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just flashes to them having sex.
Yeah.
The bishop and his dude. And then, they finish up and he's getting his gun strapped on in his robe.
I love that he puts his gun on almost first. He's naked.
He does, yeah.
But his
puts
gun
the
belt
gun
goes on first.
And then the
robe.
robe.
I was expecting him to not even bother with the robe. Just running around.
But he puts the robe on. And it's funny because when he has to take the gun out later, he's got to go in the robe. So
right.
It doesn't make a lot of sense.
He didn't think that through.
But yeah, so he's like, I have some duties to attend to, which is bunk check kind of thing.
Yeah.
So he goes first into the boys' dorm, which is just off his room.
Yeah.
Apparently, his room exits into the boys' dormitory. And
you got to be able to do those surprise inspections.
That's right. Surprise bunk check. And I don't know if he sees something or he just kind of randomly wakes up one boy. But he's kind of, he gets this kid, wakes him up, and the kid's like, oh, what are you going to do to us? Maybe he already had his name on the punishment list.
Yeah.
And he's like, what are you going to do to us? What's been decided of my fate? And the bishop's kind of like, oh, you don't get to find that out just yet. That's coming. And, that's part of our pleasure. And then the boy kind of pleading maybe to lessen his, punishment. He goes,
he's going to give somebody else.
He's going to narc. So he goes, I know this girl. She's hiding a picture under her pillow.
Yeah.
So now the bishop is, and this kind of leads to a little bit of a domino effect because the bishop now, he goes to this girl, finds the picture, and then she in turn goes, well, wait a minute. I know about these two girls.
They're having a secret affair.
So, and then the bishop he marches over there with that girl and they kind of look and he goes, oh my God. So he goes in and he's about to shoot this girl and she goes, wait.
Yeah.
I know about one of your guards.
This.
Yeah. One of your guards is having regular sex.
Yeah.
Regular sex, mind you, with one of the servant girls. So now it's not just the bishop. Well, that, regular sex is, one of the big punishment things. So now all four friends get woken up. They go marching down, they go outside. They're all marching in their bathrobes with their guns. They march down to, this servants' quarters, I guess, and they kind of peer around the corner and they see Enzio having sex with the servant girl, and they open the door and he's like, oh, and then he does this weird kind of salute.
Yeah, he raises his fist in the air, and I read it as sort of a resistance movement. He's clearly part of the not a member of the fascist. He's a member of the resistance.
Hence his vaginal intercourse.
His vaginal intercourse, which we all know is a no-no.
Yeah.
And then he's shot to death.
Yeah. Yeah, they kind of line up and take turns shooting him. And then I think it's the Duke goes over to the servant girl and just shoots her once. And they pump the dude full lead, shoot him dozens of times, and then just one shot for the
Well, I mean, the regular sex is one thing, but being part of the resistance is probably where the real mistake happened.
That's right. So that kind of changes the tone of things, and now we move into the torture kind of aspect of the Circle of Blood.
Right. So everyone is sort of gathered together. And
it's a new prostitute now, right? Because we're in a different circle.
Right.
So this prostitute tells the story of this, fancy dude who would hold these parties, and he would take, his favorite girl from the party and kick her off the balcony of the ballroom or whatever down into his torture sex dungeon, essentially, and torture all these girls with razor blades and fire and all sorts of things. So, obviously the four friends love this and are like, let's get cracking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then some group of them are given blue ribbons, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
they just have to sit in a tub of shit, I guess.
Yeah. Well, so the blue ribbons, I think, are the people who eventually are they're veering off for torture and death.
Yeah.
But at the start, yes, they're just sort of given shit baths.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
To prepare them?
I guess. Yeah. It's sort of, I guess, maybe the...
Well, I guess because they were, if you think back to the one guy feeding his bride shit saying you'll need your strength, maybe they think this is how they're fortifying these kids for the torture.
Well, it could also be like the inverse of, like, if you're preparing someone for something maybe more holy, you would bathe them, you would clean them up, and then do that. And this is going down the opposite road where we have to, putrefy you or cover you in filth before we end you. I can't remember what was going on during the bathing, though, because... It was the story.
The story was still going on. Yeah, the story was still going on. And then there also, like, one of the girls is like, Father, why have you forsaken us? And screaming out, while the story's going on. And then there's like the preparation of the courtyard, which we don't really see. Like, what we see is, I think it's the Duke first. There's a little room with like an elevated chair, at a window that looks down into the courtyard. And so he kind of comes in there with his guards and he's got his little binoculars and everything. And then we see, like, through the binoculars, which is a cool shot. Like, you actually kind of see the binoculars, like, looking through the window of the courtyard. And, so it's not super, super clear, but we see, the president and the bishop, and they've got guys and girls kind of staked down to the ground, right? So tied at all fours and kind of on the ground. And then some of the torture basically begins here. So
there's a chair where I think somebody has a strap around their neck that's wound tighter and tighter.
Yeah.
Some of the people that are staked on the ground, someone lights a candle.
Yeah, I think that's the first kind of torture is the candle. The guy holds it up to one guy's penis and then to another girl's breasts. And, so there's kind of this fire torture. And then it gets kind of worse from there. Like,
there's a guy whose tongue is sort of pulled out and cut off. Yeah. There's another guy whose eye is sort of popped out.
Yeah.
And someone gets scalped.
Yeah, a girl gets scalped. Guy gets, like, his nipples branded off with a hot, poker. And there's whipping, and they hang a girl, and, all sorts of just common torture stuff happening. And there's guards down in the courtyard having a good time. And, the three friends seem to be taking turns. Like, we see different friends
there's a different
in
person
the kind of
on
chair,
the chair
in
with
the room that's watching. So they're kind of circling, cycling that through.
One moment I personally found kind of funny was where the woman who is playing the music through it all goes over and opens the window and looks out. We don't see what she sees, but I assume it's the same torture as everything else. Yeah. And she is so shocked that she jumps out the window to her death.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, was she just not paying attention to what happened up to this point? Or was it like everything was cool
until the torture?
Until it was shit, like a shit eating and rape is cool.
Yeah, but torture,
we got to draw the line somewhere.
Yeah. That was weird, because there was also another scene at one of the wedding ceremonies where the three friends are like, why isn't everyone laughing? And that same pianist is like, oh, it seems like she has this look like, oh, this is bad. But then she goes over and starts doing this little pantomime with one of the other prostitutes, and they kind of make everyone laugh. And then she goes back and starts playing, and it's like, so I don't know if there was maybe like that's supposed to be the inkling of a conscience or something, and then later she, kills herself out of guilt or what, but
maybe she just couldn't think of the right song to play to support the torture, and
maybe.
rather than like disappoint the president or whoever, she just decided to end her life.
Well, and also before she jumps, she does like what is that? But it looks like she maybe sees someone she recognizes or something. Like she almost has this look of like, oh, who's that? And then like jumps out the window.
See, the way I read it actually is to me, it looked like she saw something and was actually trying to get a better look at it.
Yeah. And like fell out.
Huh?
Yeah.
And then maybe accidentally fell. I don't know.
But yeah, so there's all this torture going on. And then there's kind of the two guards in this room with the chair. They kind of, one guy changes the radio station, and then a little bit of a jauntier tune comes on, and
I'm pretty sure it was the same song from the beginning of the film.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. And then he's like, "Hey, you want to dance?" And the other guard's like, "Yeah, all right." So they start dancing, and he's like, "Hey, what's your girlfriend's name?" "Oh, Marguerite." And like, just, not a care in the world, just
having a little dance,
just having a little fun,
talking about their life at home.
Yeah. And meanwhile, the torture's going on, and that's where it ends.
Yeah. I will mention here that there were a few alternative endings considered. And in fact, there were 4 different endings shot. The first was a shot of a red flag in the wind with the words, "Love you," but this was abandoned by the director because he thought it too pompous and prone to the ethics of psychedelic youth. The second showed all the actors other than the 4 gentlemen. The director and his troupe perform a wild dance in a room of the villa furnished with red flags, and the scene was filmed with the purpose of using it as a background scene during the credits, but was discarded because it appeared in the eyes of Pasolini chaotic and unsatisfactory. Another final scene, discovered years later, in which was only in the initial draft of the script, showed after the torture's end, the 4 gentlemen walk out of the house and drawing conclusions about the morality of the whole affair. And finally, keeping the idea of dance as the summation of carnage, Pasolini chose to mount the so-called final Margarita with the 2 young black shirts dancing. What a film.
Yeah, it's an intense ride.
Yeah.
I know we kind of joke around here a little bit about some of it, but yeah, that's kind of the only way to get through it, because it's fairly disturbing. And as you pointed out at the start of it, like that is kind of the point of the movie, is to drive the point of obscenity and, perverseness as far as, this absolute power corrupting absolutely idea goes. But it makes it a tough watch.
And I think it is about showing sort of not just sort of the contempt that these people have for their subjects, but almost the glee that they have from the contempt.
Yeah. Well, and they talk about
how much they enjoy being
they talk about this in the movie, of like how their excitement is heightened by, pain that they experience, the lady whose mother drowned in front of her, or,
the joy from watching her suffer. We're talking about
exactly.
That. Yeah.
So it's not just that they're living out their fantasies, but they are, just pushing these people to the, kind of limits of what they can take emotionally and physically and what have you. And that's where their ultimate satisfaction comes from. It's pretty depraved. So, don't watch with your parents. Might not be good for the family movie night.
Only if you have very understanding parents who are interested in having complicated conversations.
Yeah. But, at the end of the day, this movie gets its point across, I think, relatively well. I mean, the amount of times, and, it might vary from person to person, but where if you don't turn away, you're thinking about turning away.
Yeah.
There's many of those points in this movie, and it really hammers home. And like you said, the glee, the excitement on the faces of these individuals as they get to do whatever they want, right? Our word is law around here. We are the deities, they tell the crowd of kids, just that sheer pleasure in absolute power over people is just crazy.
Yeah.
I had a little quote from like the start of the movie where I think it's the Duke, because they had this.
Is it when they're signing the books?
No, it's when they're talking about they're going to marry each other's daughters.
Oh, that's right. That was another
which is like
agreement
a weird,
they made at the start to sort
weird
of bind
scene.
them all together.
Yeah, and that we never really kind of saw happen. But
they got distracted.
Yeah, so the Duke at that time has this little quote, and then they all laugh hysterically about it. So, within a budding grove, the young girls bloom, all unaware of their impending doom. They listen to the radio, they drink their tea, not knowing they must soon forego their liberty. The bourgeoisie does not recoil from slaughter, though the victims be their own loving sons and daughters. And they all just laugh heartily. And yeah, just another display of like where they are from a power and politics standpoint over the rest of their subjects. And just the I guess probably the first hint at what their plans exactly are, to enjoy themselves for 120 days.
120 days. That, it's worth talking about the fact that, this film is intended to sort of take place over 120 days. That's the 120 Days of Sodom. That I kind of do feel like is not super clear in the way the film is presented. It could just be because that wasn't something that the director was interested in.
It does seem to go a lot quicker.
It does. And I feel like there must have been some decent meals in between the shit eating. Otherwise, by the time we got to the last circle, I think people would be looking a little bit rougher than they do. But other than that, and I wanted to mention too, this was interesting. After we decided on doing this film next, I came across an interesting quote with someone discussing this film in context of Jeffrey Epstein and the Epstein files.
Oh, right.
Which I sent to you.
Yeah.
The quote is, "The comparison being made of Pasolini's Salò film and the Epstein files is not a metaphor in an explanation of the real thing. Pasolini unveiled the intimate logic of naked power, the same that Epstein's roles expose in Raw without aesthetic mediation. Salò does not speak of historical fascism, but of fascism as a permanent possibility of capitalism. It's not about insanity or individual perversion. It is about the instrumental rationality of power when it is emancipated from all ethical limits. Power doesn't just want obedience, it wants to create reality. Epstein was not an isolated sadist, but the manager of a legal and morally extraterritorial territory, where the capitalist elites created an experimental space freed from all human law. There, the accumulation of capital translates to the accumulation of impunity on feminized and impoverished bodies. Epstein wasn't selling girls' bodies, he was selling the experience of impunity. The end product was not the sexual act, but the assurance that there would be no consequences. That's the supreme commodity in capitalism, the right to transgress without punishment. But power is not omnipotent. It has cracks, and in those cracks grows the ordinary. The resistance here is not complainants, but practice of reappropriation. Reappropriation of the body, reappropriating the narrative, reappropriation of the look. Where there is testimony, there is a gap in the power. Where there is memory, there is a possibility of justice. Epstein is not a case. He is the most vomiting face of a system that needs to be destroyed before he destroys everything. Burn what has to burn."
Yeah. Definitely a lot of parallels.
So we did select this because it was a film, ostensibly about fascism, but was not expecting, during the period that we were getting ready to do this and doing it, we'd encounter like a direct comparison to something going on in the news. But again, it's an interesting reminder that the people in power in fascism don't care about the people under them, and in fact just see them as toys, as playthings to be tortured, to be used as fodder for entertainment, or
when you have carte blanche to do whatever you want, right? There is no ethical limits. And seeing that explored in this film, sometimes very tough to watch, But yeah, like likening that back to things that are happening in the real world, I think is really the crazy thing, where we go, holy crap, like this is happening. And the fallout is still happening from these Epstein files, right? With people going down left and right, resigning, people being called to account.
Yeah, about time too.
Yeah, which is something that you don't see in the movie, right? We see, a little bit of resistance from the one guard, but, essentially there's no consequence.
Yeah, right.
For these guys in the film. Thankfully, in the real world, we're starting to see some of that. But yeah, just the
but I think that's
seem to be doing whether it's books or films or what. There's sometimes too many disturbing parallels between real life.
No, you're not wrong.
And this art. With the art ostensibly being a warning to us of, what to avoid and what not to do. And then, we're seeing it translating in real life, and we're going, oh, geez, whether it's, 1984 or this or, Rage or whatever, like there's too many of these, things that we're seeing paralleled in life. And, when we talk about censorship and the repression of some of these stories and tales, people not having access to that, I think, is part of what leads to some of this stuff happening in real life, because we don't see those tales. We don't, whether it's, obscene art or whether it's, deeply troubling stories or things like that. If we don't, have the opportunity to see that and work through that in a, safe space.
Yeah.
The translation when that happens in real life is much more horrific. And so, just again, another kind of point against this craze that we're getting into in terms of censorship and repressing things and not talking about it, not discussing these types of stories and this kind of art. So too many parallels.
Yeah. Do you think that when it comes to films like this that are so extreme, as much as I would probably argue that it's difficult to really fairly depict the horrors of fascism without dialing it up to 11, do you think that makes it harder for the average person to be able to engage? Because I don't think this is a film for everybody.
No.
I don't think this is a film that everybody should sit down and watch, even though I think the message of it is important for everyone to be able to
like I said, somehow. This is not one for family movie night.
No, exactly.
Sure. But I mean, I think when we talk about art, right, and talk about, allegory or metaphor or things like that, I think it is important to hyperbolize a little bit, because when we look at it in plain terms or in muted terms, the message can get lost or clouded or misinterpreted a lot more easily. And so I think if we're talking kind of more the artistic merit of going to extremes with the story to get the point across, I think that, a lot of artists are going to err on the side of, we're going over the top.
Sure.
Because you don't want there to be as many questions about, what I'm trying to get across.
But I guess
I want the discussion to be about that point rather than, what was the point?
Yeah, but to an extent, I wonder how much an artist shoots himself in the foot by creating something that is just going to be ignored or outright rejected by so many people. Because it's, when you look at the type of people, fascists, who would try to, diminish or remove this kind of work from circulation, it's very easy to jump on the things like, well, it's just a movie about torturing kids and eating shit, and it's got no artistic merit.
Yeah.
And to the average person, they're going to agree. They're going to see this film and just be like, that kind of looks like it to me.
Yeah.
And does it almost do more, I don't want to say it does more harm than good, but does it not do as much good as it could have if approached differently? But then if approached differently, do you weaken the message to the point that it's no longer relevant too, right?
I think you're hitting on kind of the crux of how to create art around your message, right? And I mean, I think there's a balance to be had there, but I think you're right that as extreme as you go to deliver that point, it does limit the kind of distribution and the demographics that are going to actually partake of your art. So I kind of maybe a double-edged sword there, where you go, if I can hammer this point home, and be really clear about what I'm trying to express, great. But at the same time, now less people are going to see that. Whereas if I weaken the message, if I get it out to more people, it's not going to be as important.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I guess we can't ever ask this director about that, but
no, that's true.
How did he die?
He was murdered.
Well, it was something crazy, right?
Yeah, and I don't know that they ever really, there was somebody arrested for it. Let's just bring.
Was it tied to like mafia or something like that?
It was potentially linked to the mafia. Yeah. Pasolini was murdered. This is again Wikipedia. Pasolini was murdered on November 2nd, 1975 at a beach in Ostia. Almost unrecognizable, Pasolini was savagely beaten and run over several times with his own car. Once is frequently enough to be run over, but several times. Multiple bones were broken and his testicles were crushed by what appeared to have been a metal bar. An autopsy revealed that his body had been partially burned with petrol after his death. The crime was long viewed as a mafia-style revenge killing, one that was extremely unlikely to have been carried out by only one person. Pasolini was buried at the cemetery of Casarsa della Delizia. Giuseppe Pino Pelosi, then 17 years old, was caught driving Pasolini's car and confessed to the murder. He was convicted and sentenced to 9 years in prison in 1976, initially with unknown others, but that phrase was later removed from the verdict. 29 years later, on May 7th, 2005, Pelosi retracted his confession, which he said had been made under the threat of violence to his family. He claimed that 3 people with a Southern accent had committed the murder while insulting Pasolini as a dirty communist. I'm going to assume the Southern accent is a reference to like Southern Italy and not Southern Americans who flew over to take care of him. Other evidence uncovered...
The Dixie Mafia.
Exactly. Other evidence uncovered in 2005 suggested that Pasolini had been murdered by an extortionist. Testimony by his friend Sergio Citti indicated that some of the rolls of film from Salò had been stolen and that Pasolini planned to meet with and negotiate its return from the thieves on November 2nd, 1975, following a visit to Stockholm, Sweden. Citti's investigation uncovered additional evidence, including a bloody wooden stick and an eyewitness who said he saw a group of men pull Pasolini from the car. The Rome police reopened the murder as a cold case after Pelosi's retraction, but the investigative magistrates responsible for the investigation found that the new elements were insufficient to justify a continued inquiry. As of 2023, a plea to reopen the case was filed based on DNA evidence and links the murder to the Banda della Magliana, a criminal organization with close ties to far-right terrorism, as the probable culprits.
But nothing about whether it was directly related to the film aside from the missing reels.
Well, aside from the missing reels, and I mean, I guess there's an argument to say, that if the criminal organization, with ties to far right terrorism, far right
didn't really like the anti-fascist messaging.
Yeah, but no, at this point, I don't think. I think there are some theories that there's a relation. Just, I guess, the timing of it alone, that he was killed even before it was released, is going to give you some pause to consider that being a factor. I think this is probably one of the, if not the most kind of fucked up thing that we've watched so far.
Yeah. I mean, I knew it was going to be a little wacky, going into it, but I mean, there's
a little wacky.
There's some tough stuff to watch in this movie.
I feel like that's a good. We could pull that quote and use it on like the DVD cover.
This movie's a little wacky.
Just a little wacky.
Yeah. It's about 4 best friends in the. But it's like I said before. It started out. I was a little worried about the cinematography, and then it actually turns out to be really well shot.
Yeah.
The artistry of just the perverse scenes that we see is really well done. But it is, I mean, the stuff that we're watching is, we're seeing rape and torture.
And a lot of it is done in really, really long takes too. Like there's not a lot of cutting away.
There's a lot of nudity.
Yeah.
And, the kids look pretty young. In this movie.
And apparently a lot of them weren't actors.
Oh, really?
Because they didn't have a lot of like spoken lines.
Right.
So they hired a lot of models who were uncomfortable with the nudity.
Right. Okay.
But again, like watching, there's one bit, I think during one of the sort of faux marriage ceremonies where one of the dudes is just running through the naked boys and just grabbing and kissing and fondling, the Duke, going from one to one to
one, hits everyone, and not just like the kids. He's getting the guards
and the older prostitute ladies, and just watching this, thinking about like this. This is well before the invention of the intimacy coordinator. Like this was just an actor who was let loose to fondle boys, and hopefully everybody consented appropriately. You know, which is kind of, again, bonkers to think about, through the lens of modern day. This is definitely a film I don't see how you could make in a modern setting.
No.
Even if you went to like Italy to do it.
You'd have to CGI a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I guess.
To get away with it. You can't do that. A lot of that with real people.
No.
Yeah.
No. But interesting film. This one has been on my list of fucked up movies to watch for a long time. So I am glad that I got a chance to finally see it. I don't think I'm going to feel compelled to see it again.
Yeah. Probably not going to rewatch either. Once was enough.
Yeah.
And again, got the message, and, like really well put together film. Mm-hmm. But I mean, obviously the content is pretty extreme, in a lot.
And in the end, a pretty bleak message about, what is like, under fascism. And again, no real hint of hope at the end, outside of one guy being willing to raise his fist in defiance and then get gunned down.
Yeah, promptly executed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what are you thinking in terms of rating for this movie?
That's tough. That is tough. Man, Jesus. But I mean, I guess to judge it as it is, it's a solid work. I mean, but I'm struggling to know what scale to use, because usually we make a little bit of a mocking scale, and it doesn't feel like the right.
No.
I'm going to say, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go with 4 fascists executed at the end of their reign.
Okay.
Out of 5.
Yeah. I personally, I'm going to go 3.5 chamber pots out of 5. I think.
Empty or full?
Well, that's for the viewer to decide. So for part of it for me is, I think from a plot perspective, and not that, you want to make this movie longer or like better explained, but the gathering up at the start of the and like what they were signing for their rules, and why they were, able to, if they were leaders of the country, like you got the president, and like, are they on summer break? Like, why do they have all this time to just go here? And like the actual plot device, as to how this could transpire.
Yeah.
Right. I get it. We're looking at an extreme example of fascism, but like, how would this be possible? How could they pull this off? How did, the kind of logistical stuff there that would support the plot, to me was lacking.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And not that was, part of the goal of the movie or anything, but it just made it harder to go like, like what, you have the president and the Duke and the, like, nobody's missing these guys for 4 months. Like, how are they doing this? And
I see. As far as that side of
like they can just all retreat to this castle, and nobody knows where they are, or that they abducted, all these kids.
They just have their secretaries hold their calls for those months.
Anyway, so that for me, like, kind of detracted a little bit in terms of like the sensicalness of it, right? In terms of this holding together. Like, I get the point of the movie, but that was a bit of a drawback to go like, okay, well, let's look at this extreme example, but without providing realistic ways of kind of getting there.
Yeah.
So that detracted for me in terms of the movie holding together as like a believable story, and having more fear of, this kind of thing happening. But again, still, like, cinematography started out what I thought a little shaky, but got really good. I liked some of the cool shots and, pans within the house and the kind of binoculars into the yard shot, which is kind of a classic nowadays, but, I think in the 70s you didn't see that very often. And some of the near far and then the wide angles and, and the really long takes and that kind of stuff.
There's a moment where a guy
really put together
was
well.
looking through the binoculars and then he flipped them around to
give and he got a wider shot.
Example.
Yeah, that was really cool. So yeah, I think like from a filmmaking perspective, I think really well done. The message of the art, I think really well done, but it loses a bit on kind of plot and continuity and stuff for me.
And I don't think I was as troubled by that as you were. And I do think
I get held up on the technicals sometimes,
and
but
that's fair. I think in a way, I think the less detail we have about a lot of it kind of dials up the intensity and the fear of it. Like the idea that we don't really know any backstories about these people that they kidnap, that they're just random people, in a way, faceless. We're kind of almost forced to see them the same way as the friends do, and build empathy for these faceless people just through the way they're treated.
Yeah.
And I think it's fairly easy for me because, the one thing I do have an issue with is the sense that this was over 120 days when it really just sort of feels like, 4 really, because each kind of or even 3, because each circle kind of just sort of feels like its own day.
Yeah. Or a couple of days.
But in my mind too, like if you imagine that, like maybe they leave this place every week and go back to an office to do their actual work and then come back here on the weekends. We don't really know what's going on between each of these events. And that could be where some of these things, occur. But I get where you're coming from. I get where your concerns lie, and that's valid. But yeah, powerful movie, not one I ever need to see again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I second that.
Next time on When Bad Things Happen to Good People, we are starting The Diary of a Young Girl, which I see you have a copy of right there.
Yeah, got a copy right here. The definitive edition.
Yeah.
It even has some pictures in it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I will probably be picking up an ebook. Yeah, we're going to be talking about Anne Frank for a while.
Yeah. Another kind of...
Another good time.
Another good apropos of today, though. I mean, I saw something the other day that was, like an internet meme, and it was like somewhere in the U.S., there's a girl writing a diary about ICE.
Exactly.
Right, and, that hit, knowing that we're diving into this book, that hit real close to home as just another one of these parallels that just shouldn't be happening with some of the works that we're looking at.
Well, fingers crossed that by the time we get to the end of this book, things will have improved well enough that there were fewer parallels and not more parallels.
Yes.
It feels at this point like it could go either way.
It's a coin toss.
So we'll see. Yeah. We will be, of course, filtering it through a certain modern lens, I guess. And I've not read this book before. I don't know if you
No, I feel like maybe we had excerpts in school, but I've never read the old version or this new version.
Yeah. Okay. So that's next on our agenda. If you want to grab a copy and read along with us, that'll be next time.
So we're gonna do 3 episodes and a wrap up.
3 episodes and a wrap up.
So if you want to read along with us,
then we're gonna probably sneak in another movie and a video game, and then I think that gets us pretty close to our
100th
episode, which we're intending to be covering Fahrenheit 451. So
Mr. Bradbury.
There's a few more. There's some tips on what's coming at you over the rest of the year. Probably, maybe, if we maintain a semi-consistent
decent schedule,
release schedule, which we don't always, but we'll see. We're feeling good.
Yeah.
As always, you can find all of our good stuff on blahblahblahmedia.com, BLAHBLAHBLAH media.com. That's all our podcasts. That's all of our links to everything, our Buy Us a Coffee page, our merch store. But yeah, blah, blah, blah media, all our stuff there. If you like what we're doing, you can support us through Buy Me a Coffee by buying merch, or just, go to your podcast app of choice and leave a review, leave a thumbs up. Tell people about it if you like what we're talking about. And if you do want to either talk about a book we've covered, or, maybe suggest something for us to cover, or just, check in about censorship in general, you can email us at badthingshappen@gmail.com. And it is BANNED. These are band books, not books about musical bands.
Yeah.
In case you haven't
be
figured
confusing
that out yet. Yeah. Anything else we should mention?
No, just excited for kind of the lineup that we're going to get into. And like you said, hopefully things start to veer away from the subject matter in real life.
2026, the year of fascism.
Yeah.
And things.
Yeah. So, yeah. And send us your comments. And if you have anything for us that you'd like us to look at,
you know where to find us.
Yeah.
I have been Todd Sullivan.
I've been Peter Ammon.
And until we meet again,
go read a fucking book.